Anti-Snapshot SEO. How to identify easy to rank for new keyword opportunities with Lukasz Zelezny. The In Search SEO podcast is brought to you by Rank Ranger, the all-in-one SEO platform that helps scale your business through data and analytics. Hey, it's David. How do you identify new keyword opportunities that are easy to rank for? That's what I'm going to be talking about with Lukasz Zelezny from SEO.London. Lukasz, when you're just focusing on quick wins, is it not best actually to start with keywords that are ranking on page 2?
That's a fair point. Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me. A fair point. Historically, absolutely yes. You would say, show me the keywords that are almost ranking first, are almost on the top, are almost there, and I will try to make them on the top, and then I can sit back and relax and say, that's all I can do, because now I'm first and I'm ranking the highest possible, and there is nothing else that I can do, so job done. Absolutely yes. That is how it was historically. And now, should I talk about the different concept? Would you want me to move into the different concept that I started implementing?
Yeah, sure. So I didn't know if that was a question for the listener or a question for me. But essentially what you're saying is that that's not necessarily the right way to do it now, and there can be a more effective way to target newer keyword opportunities.
It's a way. It's very well known way, very efficient, but there are other ways, and I wanted to introduce into the other way, which I called anti-snapshot. So, like you mentioned, instead of going, the difference between snapshot and anti-snapshot is that instead of going with keywords that are ranking between position 3 and 10 and analyzing what is out there and how we can optimize, we're going much deeper. We're going into position 50 plus, or 60 plus, 70 plus. And there is first hypothesis that there are relevant keywords, but because we have no relevant content, Google cannot rank us higher than position 50, 60, or 70. Let me give you an example. Let's say there is a jewelry shop that is selling gold jewels, and they have e-commerce, and they have a categories, and they have a category gold wedding bands and rings, and people are very often searching like gold wedding bands, gold wedding rings, but sometimes people are searching very specific way. They're searching for yellow gold wedding bands, or white gold wedding bands, or rose gold wedding bands. And you can see that first of all, competitors know about that, and they have that super specific category, and they're ranking above us. Then we don't have, we're ranking with some other page, which is loosely related on position 50 plus, 60 plus. Another example from SEO world. People searching for SEO are historically typing SEO consultant for hire, SEO consultant for hire in London. Now, if you would take a keyword set from a year and you would say, show me keywords in Search Console, so show me keywords which doesn't contain word SEO, which rank on position 50 plus in last 12 months, you may see that sometimes people searching for redirection consultant or Core Web Vitals consultant. And I had a situation that, people are typing higher Core Web Vital consultant. And my mostly related article is what are Core Web Vitals? And I'm ranking on position 42. What is Core Web Vitals relevant to higher Core Web Vital consultant? Not really. They are talking about something similar, but not exactly this is the same intent. Writing a dedicated article why you should have a Core Web Vital consultant, how Core Web Vital consultant can help you and your business is much, much more relevant, and Google can easily switch that keyword association between the URL and rank you much higher. So this is in a nutshell how I would recommend to approach.
What happens if you only have one item? You started off with the example of white gold wedding rings. If you're a jewelry shop and you only sell one white gold wedding ring, are you better off actually creating a niche category for that product where it sits in to maybe add a relevance, show to Google exactly the context of the product? Or if you only have one of those items, then are you better off optimizing the individual product page for generic phrases like that?
I think this is definitely 100% not something to play with visibility and so on. If you have one product or one type of wedding rings, then you're not going to start creating various potential categories and duplicate this and so on and so on and so on. But if you, for example, are selling women dresses, and you know that red coat for a winter is something that people often are searching, especially women's, every year, then you will try to pick up, hand cherry pick all these red coats you have, and you will create a category which will be about red coats for a winter, which not necessarily mean that you should automatically create blue, white, black, and brown coats, because everything depends what is the demand. Red coats is something very popular, and you can type, I made this up right now as we're talking, but I think if you type right now red coats for winter or women red coats for winter, you will see that there will be lots of players in UK market like ASOS, New Look, Boohoo, Pretty Little Things, ranking with the specific category. The same like polka dot pattern and so on and so on. So everything depends on demand. And also it's worth to mention that on position 50, very often there are some random keywords which have nothing to do with ranking, or keywords which will never make you ranking in top. It can be some kind of like, I remember many years ago, I started socialmedia.pl, and somehow I started ranking on position 50 plus on keyword FB, which is like Facebook, or YT, which is like YouTube. Doesn't necessarily mean that this is a signal that, I should now create a landing page which will be describing what is YT and what is FB. No. A human, like a healthy human approach and understanding is needed in this methodology, but behind that there is lots of good things.
Let's stick with this example of red coats for winter. Obviously, that's a keyword phrase that is relevant for winter, or maybe relevant for purchasing in the autumn time. So if a website has identified that as an opportunity, but as you've alluded to, they may just be ranking in number 50 or number 60, so quite far down. How far in advance do they need to start preparing for this, so they're actually have an opportunity to be at the top of the SERP for that kind of keyword phrase? And what do you do in terms of approach to give yourself that opportunity to rank that far in advance? How far in advance do you need to create those categories, and what kind of work do you need to do in terms of maybe internal linking and other SEO efforts to give yourself that chance?
Perfect. Yeah. So winter is every year, so we can say that this is very much evergreen category. I'm refraining from using anything like years in the URL and so on and so on. Even for Black Friday, I'm using Black Friday, and the year is on in the title tag. So every year I can switch this. But going back to the codes, very often it would be like someone is typing women red coats for winter, and we are ranking position 85 with category women coats. Nothing about red, nothing about winter. Yeah. So cherry picking these coats which are red and for winter, building additional category which will be women red coats for winter, and then potentially adding this category into the top bottom navigation, internal links from other code category, and then observation how this category red coats for winter is slowly climbing in the URLs. Maybe in the SERPs. Maybe it won't hit top in this season, but it will be good for the next season. So, it's like a good old wine, maturing. Is maturing. And obviously, the problem starts if the big fishes, like I mentioned before, are starting following the same pattern. So we have a double problem, because they have a lot of authority and so on and so on and so on. And it will be more difficult to beat them on these keywords. But everything depends how deep you will dive, and you will start picking ideas for landing pages, for categories, and so on and so on. And there is never too late, never too early, because it's going into circles.
Okay, so it's a long-term approach. Depending on the authority of your website, it could take a short time. It could take a long time, depending on the competition out there as well. You said something interesting to begin with. You said, never mind the word, I think, winter. So does that mean that it would be a better strategy to actually to create a category, red coats seasonal clothes? You'd create maybe a URL along that structure. However, when it came to winter, or winter clothes, when it came to autumn time, you'd use that URL and you'd optimize that particular page for phraseology in relation to winter. And then you'd keep the same category, you keep the same page, the same URL for summertime, but you just change the optimization of that page for summertime clothes.
I wouldn't do this like that, because it will be very much like dangling lots of, for one, you can do this like that, and then you're replicating this with other categories. And, SEO always needs a bit of time, 365 days. It's a relatively short period for an SEO, So overall, I'm trying to focus on having as little as possible around that optimization. I wouldn't rather try to optimize the same pages for different seasons. I would try to refrain that. I would rather focus maybe on the having nice products every time, which are falling into the categories that are out there. Again, there is always this healthy approach. I'm always giving this example, like how far the taxonomy should be indexable, because we said about red coats for winter for women's. Someone who is listening to us will say like, okay, red, blue, black, white, brown, 5, winter, summer, autumn, spring, 4, multiply this for women, for men, 2, and at the end of the day, you will get 100 categories. And that is potentially very risky approach, because you will start very much inflating website to the level where you will start getting, first of all, you need to see your inventory. If you have this product, if that makes sense to create these categories. Second of all, what is the search demand? Yeah, that's why I said on the beginning that it's not automatically that because we can see that people are searching for red one, we automatically taking assumption that we need to create every other color. And I'm always educating my customers saying like, listen, if you're selling shoes, you can say like sport official shoes. Yeah, material, maybe 3 different materials. Multiplying this is already 6, and so on and so on. But you're not going into size. You're not going now to start building categories with the size. Size of the shoes is always a filter, which is never in Google index, or shouldn't be in the Google index, because then when you have the whole structure of categories, let's say you ended up with 50, and then you will on top of that give the size of the shoes which can be like, I don't know, additional like 15 multiplied by 15, and it's like end of the world.
Understood. Okay, great. So it creates micro categories based upon seasonality and search volume and what's important to you as a business. Keep those micro categories going for the long term. And you needn't obviously link to them from your main menu system when they're not in season, but you can bring them up, and the fact that they've existed and Google know about them, you'll be more likely to surface them higher up in the SERP when it's right for you. Great. Let's finish off with
the Pareto Pickle.
So Pareto says that you can get 80% of your results from 20% of your efforts. So what's one SEO activity that you would recommend that provides incredible results for moderate levels of effort?
I love this kind of thing, especially when I'm working alone by myself. Then I need to really focus on this kind of things. And I would like to suggest translation. Language is often a barrier to reach customers who are out there. Imagine that in Japan, if people are saying if you don't speak Japanese or you don't present information in Japanese, it doesn't exist on the market. We all think that, okay, English is so universal, but there are still areas on the world where you really need to know language, or, which is funny enough, there is plenty of people who speak fluently English, but they still start searching in the national language, despite from the fact they have no problem to communicate. Now, there is a deep L. There is Google API. There is Microsoft API. This translator become better and better and better, especially deep L. The quality of the translation is almost there. Now, if you can say like, okay, I will do as much as I can, as best as I can, but it will be still automatic translation. So sometimes there can be some nuances and you can sacrifice this. Then obviously you don't need to say like, okay, now we will be implementing a language version. We need to hire people, but proofreaders, this and that. And then boom, at the end of the day, you're getting 6 zeros bill, 6 digits bill. So DeepL can integrate with Magento, can integrate with WordPress. You can translate your content into these languages. There is, I think, 20 languages. And I could see that some people are translating to Latvian, Lithuanian, Hungarian, Estonian, even like Greek, or which use own characters, or like Bulgarian, Russian. And you can approach these people. And obviously, again, like someone say like, oh, this is automatic translation. Yes, it is. There are some mistakes, but it's not like that horrible. And you can always say like, listen, this content was translated automatically. I remember when I could see on Times that there are articles from, I think, 19th century, and they are having this little caveat, like this text was automatically scanned. So no one was typing this and proofreading this. They took the whole archive of the paper articles and they scanned this, OCR this, and posted this on the website. And that's why you can type Titanic disaster and you can see in Google SERP, this article was posted in 1912 or something. And you're like, how 1912? Like 100 years before internet was even? Okay. They just done this kind of things. So this is my approach to this. Approaching much wider amount of potential customers through the fact that you are using translator, and you can reach them and you can have a conversation with them.
Oh, I'll tell you what, it sounds like we should try and get you on another future episodes and talk specifically about that, because you've got a lot to say about that as well, I'm sure.
Thank you for having me anyway. And I hope that will help some of our listeners to scale up.
I'm sure it will do. Well, I've been your host, David Bain. You can find Lukasz Zelezny over at SEO.London. Lukasz, thanks again for being part of the In Search SEO podcast.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Thanks for listening. Check out all the previous episodes and sign up for a free trial of the Rank Ranger platform over at rankranger.com.